Good morning. Hello. Happy Monday. Welcome, everybody. Apologies for my tardiness. We are just having a Monday here across the board, as I'm sure all of you might be as well. So welcome. Today, I'm very excited. Today, we are going to talk about not just the COVID surge, explosive, exponential growth we are in here in the US, and as well as a whole bunch of international news. But today, I want to talk to you about a natural therapy, a first food, if you will, that is probably the most misunderstood supplementation that you can take to support and bolster and fortify not just your immune health and your immune system, but also your gut health. And if you are a frequent viewer of mine, you know I'm very much honed in terms of our gut healing and our gut health as it relates to our immunity and our immune system. So we're going to dig into the amazing therapeutic called Colostrum Therapy. I'll dig into a lot of the details surrounding this powerful therapeutic. I actually am a certified colostrum therapist, so I can speak from expertise and also from a clinical perspective in terms of how we can get amazing, potent antibody resources through a natural food source that can help bolster and support and enhance your own immune response to pathogens, viral and bacterial invasions within the body. So good morning, everybody. I'm hoping that YouTube, you guys are okay and clear. I had some issues just getting online with YouTube. So, you know, sometimes that happens as schools are going virtual. YouTube's a great resource for schools. So I think sometimes it slows us down on Mondays for some reason. But anyway, let me know in the chat box if this is clear. And usually we have a whole lot of chats and I'm not seeing a lot coming through, which is making me wonder if it's okay. But Instagram is live and on, and we are also, we have our badges on Instagram. It's a new function through that community, which is a way to support our channel. So you can hit on your own little emoji or your profile and you can support us. So test it out, ladies. I see a lot of our regulars on. So let me just send a message because we might be buffering on YouTube. This is just so crazy. Sometimes when we're all three online, it can get kind of problematic. But yeah, the live chat for some reason is not functioning. So anyway, for all of you, hopefully you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up. If this doesn't, for some reason, go, I might just record it separately. But live chat usually is on. That's so weird. Wonder what's going on. I see thumbs ups. The chat function for some reason. Good morning. Okay, here. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm seeing live chats. So anyway, okay, we're all good. All right, I had a little momentary panic attack. There's delays, so we're all good. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so let's talk about the world and the growth of coronavirus. The world's at 67 million cases. The US is at 14.8 million cases. The US posted 1 million new cases in 5 days. And that basically averages out. We have 200,000 or more new cases on a daily basis. We are having a running tally for the last 7 days of over 200,000 cases. The news here in the US is quite alarming. For any of the deniers and the folks that are in just total denial that this is anything overwhelming, anything but overwhelming to our healthcare system and the state of the health of every American, coronavirus, COVID-19 is now the #1 leading cause of death in 2020 of Americans. So the leading cause of fatalities is coronavirus. It has exceeded heart disease and cancer. So it busted through that. It was sitting at #4 for a little bit in terms of the leading cause. and it has since exceeded cancer and heart disease. Now, I do also want to make a note, just so that we have some perspective. The quantity of fatalities on a daily basis has gone up past 2,700 new fatalities on a daily basis. Now, I didn't live here in this country when it happened, but I was abroad, and it was very weird when it happened. But September 11th is a day that we all celebrate, we recognize, we memorialize, we mourn as a nation. We've had days in the last 7 days where the fatality rate has exceeded September 11th fatalities. Just to put that in perspective, I know sometimes we can get where the numbers are so overwhelming that it can be hard to digest. So I just want to let you guys all kind of know where we're at in terms of fatalities. We had a little bit of a lower day yesterday. I'm not going to say that that is indicative. It's just potentially the way the numbers come out on a Sunday. But yesterday we had 154,000 new cases, much lower than previous 7 days. We also had a decrease in fatalities. We had 1,036 Americans die of coronavirus yesterday. Now, the total fatality rate is 285,564 Americans have died of coronavirus. Again, that now exceeds cancer deaths and it exceeds heart disease. I will say, because I work with a lot of cancer patients, I'm curious if some of the changes due to the COVID parameters of changing the format and the way that we're treating cancer patients may have a role in that. I don't know. We will see. We'll probably find out after the fact as we get more information. But just know that some people, their surgeries are being put off a little bit. Some of the treatment profiles of immediately going with radiation and chemotherapy aren't there. And that may very well be a factor, but that doesn't change the severity of coronavirus. I do want to make a note that the surge, they've assessed what they believe is the surge that we're in, 2 core sources. The weather being a big one, the changing in the weather, moving indoors. So the weather being one, colder weather, and then our behavior. What we can change is our behavior, not necessarily the weather so much. And I saw a sign that went viral online, and it was a restaurant that had "mask it or casket" as a quote on the outside of their restaurant. And that is, it just highlights just the severity of the situation. Before we dig into how severe it is here in the US, I want to highlight some international news because we have an international community and we have folks living all over the world. So globally, we're at 67 million cases. US has 14.8. The next leading country is India at 9.6 million. Then it drops down. Brazil's at 6.6 million. And then there's a big drop. Russia's at 2.4. And then Europe's increasing. So now in the number 4 spot is France at 2.2 million. Just behind that, Italy at 1.7 million, the UK at 1.7 million, and Spain is at 1.6 million. Denmark internationally has tightened their quarantine and their social distancing. On the 9th of November, they are closing all museums, all restaurants, all cultural events. Schools are closing, and the reason they're doing that, they started exceeding 2,000 new cases on a daily basis. Yesterday, they surpassed 2,000. And that quarantine, that social distancing starts December 9th and goes through the 3rd of January. So all of the Christmas holidays, all of New Year's is going to be in a lockdown phase. The other thing that we've seen, Indonesia has placed a 1 million dose order with China. They are getting the Chinese vaccine. That we have the Chinese vaccine, we have the Russian vaccine, and then now the UK is rolling out on Tuesday the Pfizer vaccine. That's the Pfizer vaccine that here we're waiting on authorization. I'll give you more news about that. And then the other really sad thing that's happening in Canada, you guys know I love animals, and it's just really disturbing when we have another mink farm. This is, these cute, they're like little ferrets that have just gorgeous fur, and the animals are grown for their pelts, for coats and all this stuff. Well, we have a Canadian mink farm in British Columbia, and they've had an outbreak. 8 people on the farm have had an outbreak. And what they've identified is that the people, the farmers and the workers, have brought in the infection, and it is passed to the mink. Apparently, mink, very similar to felines, they are very susceptible to SARS-CoV-2. And apparently, we know it mutates. So within the receptivity within the mink, it mutates, and then they can infect the humans. And the mutated version is really lethal, way more resistant to the vaccines that are rolling out. So this is really problematic. I don't know the details of the 8, if they have the human non-mutated version or if they've seen the mutation. But as far as I know, the government and the parties that kind of manage farming, they've got everybody in quarantine. There has been no call to cull the animals, but that might happen. We've seen just a massive eradication of these mink on the mink farms because of this virus. So that's big news there in British Columbia. And it's very concerning. Obviously, Canadian government has gotten quite a bit of this under control. And, an isolated outbreak like this with maybe potentially mutated version could very well be quite lethal. Okay, let's dip into US news. On average, our daily cases are about 200,000 new cases on a daily basis. The stats are really, really alarming in terms of the last 3 to 4 weeks. We've seen a humongous increase in fatalities in the long-term care centers. Right now, the fatality toll in long-term care centers is 40 to 50% of our daily totals. So for instance, yesterday we had 1,036 Americans die. 40 to 50% of those fatalities are related to long-term care center fatalities. That is the largest and biggest surge we've seen to date in these facilities. And it is one of the reasons why a lot of them are locking down if they hadn't already, and why they're on track to be some of the first to be vaccinated because of the fatality rates. Sunday, the US had our highest rate of hospitalizations. In total, we're at 101,487 patients hospitalized with COVID. Kentucky had the worst increase in positive percentage rate. They had the highest week at 9.75% positivity rates. That's the highest Kentucky's had. They're in a little bit of a freak out mode in the state health departments. California set records. They had the highest number of cases they've ever had to date. They had over 30,000 new cases a day over the weekend, and their hospitalizations have hit a record. They have 10.6 thousand patients hospitalized due to COVID-19. Maine, even though Maine is on the lower end of total number of cases, Maine has had infection rates double since Halloween. And so all of November and then the first week of December, they've doubled their cases. Exponential growth in Maine. Huge concern for them up there. I do want to highlight there are 4 states that have had the worst daily averages. They've seen major increases in the last week. Rhode Island is number 1. Right now, out of 100,000 people, 110.6 will register positive in Rhode Island for COVID. Minnesota, they had a little dip, but they've exceeded it again. And they have had, for every 100,000 persons being tested, 105 come back positive. South Dakota, they're right up there, 100,000 who get tested, 100.5, so 100.5 people come back positive. Wyoming's up there again, 100,000 people tested, 99 come back positive. And I do want to highlight that there was a situation in Staten Island. Apparently, Staten Island has had an increase in their positive percentage rate. They hit over 4%, New York's really looking at that positive percentage rate. That's the kind of threshold for them making changes to some of the social distancing and closing down certain areas that are showcasing positive percentages. And apparently over the weekend, there was a bar owner in New York who was defying orders. He was serving food indoors and booze. And at 12:30, I believe it was Saturday night, the police showed up and he fled in his car and apparently had an altercation with the police, and he's been arrested. And that is the seriousness of these areas where, a small outbreak in a bar where there might be 50 or 60 people, that then can end up being thousands who get infected. So the seriousness of, the indoors, the CDC's also made some changes over the weekend to calling for masking when you're indoors all the time. I think we're starting to see a shift in terms of them going back to some of the original really intense warnings. I think that also has to do with some of the political aspects, but you are going to see and hear more people wearing masks when they're being interviewed. If they're indoor events, it should be all masked up and avoided for folks over the age of 65. I do want to highlight, just so you kind of know where the states are, we've had some movement within states. So, we have 3 states right now that have had a total of over 1 million cases. California and Texas both have 1.3 million and change cases. Florida's at 1.05 million. And then Illinois moved up. They're at 788,000 total cases. New York's at 710,000. Georgia, there's a big dip from New York to Georgia. Georgia's at 483,000 total cases. Ohio's moved up. They're at 475,000 total cases. And then we're seeing the 2 states have had massive outbreaks, massive explosive growth in the last 6 weeks. Wisconsin now is under Ohio at 441,000, and Michigan's at 426,000. Pennsylvania's at 423. And then we're seeing Tennessee. Tennessee's moved in at 400,000. Then North Carolina at 395, and Indiana at 384. So we're starting to see some of the states that had really been really low, and now over the last 6 weeks, they've had just this explosive growth. So we're starting to see that movement. There's possibility that there's some interchanging of some of the PPE and the needs that they're required from ventilation and things like that. But just wanted to highlight, so we have a bit bigger understanding. Posting 1 million new cases in 5 days is just staggering. It took us months to post 1 million, and then several weeks after that. So it's just growing and growing and growing. I think my first show, I had a whiteboard, and it was like, we have 2,000 cases, and this could equal, and it just showed how you can get to 1 million very quickly as there's this exponential growth. We are now moving into the 1 million mark in less than a week. So that it doesn't bode well. Now, does that mean everybody dies of COVID? No. Does that mean folks don't have to be hospitalized? Yes. But there are long-term challenges. There are underlying immunohealth and compromises via the blood clotting, cellular changes, and just viruses can change the makeup of your body. And it can permanently damage organs and glands and tissues, and can render you imbalanced, sometimes temporarily and sometimes permanently, depending on the impact. And so even though we are getting, the nurses and the doctors are getting a better handle on how to get people through the really severe states where they have to be ventilated, they're proning everybody. They're putting them on their bellies and flipping them. The proning allows the lungs to drain better, just by nature of the way the virus affects the lungs. But it doesn't mean that they don't have to now have dialysis, or that they have arrhythmia and heart damage. And that is a long-term diagnosis that just because people survive doesn't mean that they come out completely free of any health crisis, which is one of the reasons why today we'll get to our topic, but I really want to help all of you really support the immune state so that your body can quickly and easily address a viral invasion. And this includes any other viral invasions you might be accustomed to or exposed to now or in the future, but also how to heal your immune state and to balance your body. So we'll dig into that just after a few little tidbits of news. So I do want to notate one of the things that is happening currently is the total review of the Pfizer vaccine here in the US. On Thursday, the FDA met to hear and review the Pfizer vaccine early authorization, emergency use authorization documents. That is underway. We also know that there's a third party that's involved. I don't know the details on if they're reviewing that right now, but one of the things that has come out in communication about this meeting on Thursday, the manufacturer here in the US said that one of the most complicated aspects of getting this vaccine manufactured and delivered is the fact that they are behind. There's just a lot to do with the transportation process, the storage methods. It has to be kept at a really, really cold temperature, and that has to be consistent. And what they've seen is there's been a lack of organization and planning. We've known since early March that this was going to be in the works. And part of that has led to what they've described a 6 to 8 week delay of having the ideal hit or the ideal threshold of having 100 million doses available. So already Pfizer is communicating right now before they even get the AOK. They've got the AOK in the UK, but they don't have the AOK here in the US. They might get it. They might get it this week. They might get it next week. Everybody's on pins and needles, and all the facilities are ready and getting ready. Like Duke Medical, UCLA, they're highlighting in social media. They've got special areas where the doctors, they'll be able to vaccinate 100,000 people in a week. Problem is, if the vaccine, as soon as we get that authorization, we're already 6 to 8 weeks behind. That does not bode well when we're talking about long-term care centers and the surges, and then holiday travel and people completely obliterating social distancing requirements and wearing masks outside. And that does not mean that I'm not saying we should be reliant on this. It's part of the model. But ultimately, we need to bolster our own immune health and know that, there's no quick fix, and this is not going to suddenly just go away in 6 months. I mean, we need to be really realistic. We're looking at probably another 10 months until we start to see some things evening out. I do also want to make a note. One other thing I want to communicate. This weekend, I think I've announced, I've been doing more PR related work, meaning different publications and reporters are doing research, and they're looking for expertise to give them quotes and background knowledge so that they can quote them for pieces that they're writing. And over the weekend, pretty large online publication had requested information from me about children and COVID-19, the impact of potential previous vaccines on children and the immune state. So it prompted me digging a little bit further into some details so that I could really hone in on research and speak intelligently to this particular article that was being written. And I missed something. I have to apologize to you guys. In that whole Thanksgiving timeframe I took off, I missed some research that came out, and I want to share that with you. I didn't print it out, but I'll tell you all about it because it's actually quite fascinating. There was out of the university in Madrid, there was a clinician as part of the pediatric immunology department that wanted to hone in on whether any type of current vaccines that children and adults have received, if there's any potential what they call cross immunity. So will there be some immune benefits that maybe some previous vaccines has allowed the body to potentially recognize this coronavirus? And maybe what the research dug into is the big question that everybody wants to know. Why are children less susceptible? They get COVID. Sometimes they're a third or half of the cases, but the severity, it's a lot lower with them. We still have fatalities. We still have children that get very overwhelmed by the system, and they have the MIS, the multiple inflammatory syndrome. But in general, they see kids not having to be hospitalized, and even more crazy, they have high viral loads. So that was the big question that this research sought to seek, was to find out if any vaccines that maybe kids have gotten, maybe that's a reason, because most of the time kids are being vaccinated more so than adults. I mean, when's the last time you as an adult have had a vaccine? I think the last time I had something was when I had to travel in college. I went to Africa for a summer, and then I lived abroad. And so we had yellow fever and all these like really intense vaccines, which, by the way, if you do that, you should do that. So this is what he found. He looked at all different types of vaccines. And the thing that what's really interesting is single viral vaccines, or one targeted vaccine, had no impact. There was no sort of cross immunity that was built up. But what he zeroed in on was the DTP vaccine. It's a trifecta, if you will. And it comes early on. So there are several series of these vaccines. And then kids, once they reach like age 6 or 7, they get a booster. And he found, and the DTP, one of the P is the pertussis, so whooping cough, the D, diphtheria, and the T is tetanus. What he found is that even though those three categories, those three things that you vaccinate for, they're not viral in orientation, they're more kind of bacterial. What happens is when those three are in combination inside the children's body, they actually have the same effect on the protein, the ACE2 receptors, and the protein spikes. So, the little virus has these protein spikes. The protein spike is what allows the virus to implant its RNA. It starts coding for multiple viral replication, and then all of a sudden we get this overwhelm. And the organs and the tissue that's receptive to these spikes and the RNA are our lungs and other areas of the body, heart, we see gut, the brain. This vaccine, what they show is it has the same type of antibody development that stops this protein that ends up becoming overwhelming. So it blocks this ACE2 receptivity is basically what it means. It clamps down on that spike and minimizes the replication. That's really fascinating. So I don't know if you guys find that fascinating. It was really exciting. As I was digging through, I had missed it. So I apologize to all of you. I like to kind of be up on top of all of the latest research. But this was something that triggered my talk for you today, which, let me make a note. We're going to talk a little bit further about colostrum therapy, because colostrum therapy also has a spectacular capacity to support the antibody development within your body. And those antibodies, did you go away? Oh, it went blank. Let's see. YouTube went blank. Oh man, I hate this that this did this. Hopefully it's just my computer. Okay, it looks like it's just my computer. Okay, so I'm just going to keep talking. You guys keep commenting. It's just been weird today. But basically, there are antibodies in colostrum. So colostrum, every mammal produces colostrum before breast milk. And colostrum is an extremely nutritious, nutrient-dense first food. This happens to be bovine in its orientation. Unfortunately, we cannot manufacture and sell human colostrum. So we get it from a bovine source, and it is not a dairy product. So folks that have traditional dairy allergies, this actually heals them of that. But colostrum, this first food, has micronutrients, it has multivitamin, it has a multitude of vitamins, it has a multitude of minerals, and it has an assortment of health benefits. And this is where I think this is most critical when we're dealing with helping support your body's own natural antibody development. And we call some of the antibodies, just like this one research with kids, there's certain proteins that are developed, and those proteins happen to be antibodies. Well, we also reference some of the antibodies that get developed by colostrum. So when we nurse, if you weren't a nursing baby, you need colostrum in your life. If you've taken any antibiotics or steroids or have any type of autoimmunity or leaky gut, you need colostrum, because it's evidence that you have an imbalance in your body's natural immunoglobulin production. So these are antibodies that when we consume a colostrum like this is a powder form. We also have it in a capsule. But these antibodies, these immunoglobulins that when you consume this, the gut produces, they're really overwhelmingly beneficial to your immune state. So there are multiple. So I'm going to name the three that I find the most important. IgA, so it's a capital I, a lowercase g, and then A. So immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin, so IgG, capital G. That's a really critical one. And IgM. There's IgF. There's a whole bunch of others. This really, really is powerful at helping produce these immunoglobulins within your own body. So it supports your antibody development and response to fungus, pathogens like bacteria and viruses. So a bacterial exposure, a viral exposure, pandemic viral exposure, hint, hint, this is really beneficial for. Now, I have to make my claim. Colostrum has not been studied in the state of COVID. So meaning we haven't seen any studies yet of the use of colostrum therapy to benefit coronavirus. I do know that I mentioned, I think a week or two ago, we have a ongoing study currently happening in, I believe it's Singapore, where the scientists are researching why certain babies or infants have automatic built-in immunity. It's very much plausible and probable that the colostrum that they receive when they're delivered and they begin nursing automatically is the protective version or protects the baby. So, I know this a lot from having breastfed Gabriel and done a lot of my own research as we were preparing for that. But one of the things that we find is the way the human or any mammal gets its natural immune health and natural immune protection is from the first food from our mothers, the colostrum. And sometimes colostrum will be in existence for a day. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days. It usually takes 2 days for the milk to come in. And if you breastfed, there's a difference. It one feels different when it is passing through the breast. It is a totally different color. It's this like gold color. They call it liquid gold. And it is as valuable, if not more so, than true gold. It is plentiful in all of these really amazing resources. So it has lactoferrin, which is a protein that is critical for the body to respond, the immune system to respond to certain infections. And those are infections that would come about from a bacteria or a virus, bacterial or viral invasion. The colostrum also has growth factors. So it stimulates the growth of the baby. It stimulates the growth of the microvilli. It stimulates the growth of the intestinal lining. It stimulates the growth of skin. It stimulates all these other types of growth factors. So it has 2 different types of protein-based hormones. It's IGF-1 and IGF-2. That's a kind of immune growth factor. Those are very similar to we call them insulin-like growth factors. This is amazing when it comes to folks that are immune compromised can greatly benefit from colostrum because of the growth factors. So if you've had a huge course of antibiotics, you've got sinusitis, you've got gut imbalances, you've got Hashimoto's, you have lupus or Lyme's or MS, or are dealing with just for me, being run down with Epstein-Barr virus in my early 20s was enough to qualify to benefit from that. Plus, my mom did not breastfeed me. So if you are not breastfed as a baby, you are completely void of those antibodies, those growth factors, the lactoferrin, the baseline foundational immune support. And when you are lacking that, or if you've had it and it's imbalanced, this can be an amazing, amazing resource. So I'm recommending you guys check out my link down below. But the amazing part of colostrum is it's loaded in all of the right nutrients and all of the right building blocks to help your digestive system and your immune system fight disease. And it promotes the growth of, and even the regrowth of, some of the systems and lining and immune response that is lacking. And we can see a boost in immunity. We can use colostrum to treat certain infections, and it can be beneficial throughout our life. It has also a restorative benefit. So enthusiasts who, fitness enthusiasts, people who work out, will use colostrum to rebuild their muscle and repair faster. We will use colostrum therapy for folks that have IBS. It's really great for helping the single cell lining of the intestinal wall repair. There's a lot of research also within the gut world of colostrum. But most importantly, it also has anti-aging. So because of the growth factors, it helps keep our cells youthful and will restore and repair any damage that we've seen. I really appreciate this because of the lactoferrin. I appreciate this because of the two IGF growth factors, 1 and 2, and then the assortment of antibodies it delivers when we incorporate this into our lifestyle. So this has a really beneficial immune promotive benefit and can help us ward off illness and disease. It can help us ward off bacterial and viral infections, and can help limit some of the overwhelm that we might experience if we do get a viral or bacterial exposure. Now, this is something too where in this state, especially like this research in Madrid, and then there's been other points of research. We've also seen SARS-related research. There are 2 points of research in the SARS outbreak several years ago, where they looked at children's natural immunity. And they found that some of the things that's really fascinating is that in the child's body, everything that approaches a child's immune system is novel, and that the response mechanism of their immune system, it's way more flexible, it's way more agile, and it's way more adaptive than the human grown adult immune system. This is really an interesting kind of point with kids, and maybe why some of these factors, that you still, years after children breastfeed, still have that protection. And we also know that breastfeeding children, kids who had colostrum and breastfed, have lower instances of ear, nose, and throat infections. And, this is ironic for all of you who follow me on Instagram. This weekend, I think Gabriel had the beginnings of possibly an ear infection. We have such limited exposure. I'm not concerned about anything other than we have, he's been outside, the ear changes, the pressure changes, the temperature changes we had. He has, actually it's his left ear. He always has problems with his one left ear. It's what caused us to have to go to the hospital when I thought he had a seizure because his balance was all whacked out. And they were like, yeah, he's got fluid in his ears, no infection, but my child will get fluid in his ears. And so I, whip out all my resources that I have. And you guys know everything I share with you, I do at home.